So welcome again to our monthly Shabbat Table Talk. And this is our opportunity to meet with influential people in the Jewish community and the non-Jewish community in the greater Houston area. Now, every year in October, cities across the globe observe World Homeless Day. Its purpose is to draw attention to the needs of people experiencing homelessness and provide opportunities for communities to get involved in responding to this urgent humanitarian issue. Search Homeless Services and its Council of Congregations have invited faith groups like Congregation Beth Yeshurun to participate in World Homeless Weekend, an ideal time for congregations like ours to raise awareness. So this evening, for our October Shabbat Table Talk, it's an honor to have my friend and a member of our Jewish community, Sondee Chalcraft, to welcome to Beth Yeshurun. Sondee is the Vice President of Development at Search Homeless Services. She graduated from the University of Texas at Austin with the BBA in Business Honors and Accounting and an MBA, and went on to obtain her JD from Columbia Law School. After practicing in the health law section of Vincent & Elkins, Sondee stayed home for many years to raise her children. Upon returning to work, Sondee chose to move into the nonprofit world and worked in development of KIP, a network of charter schools with a mission to help low-income students to and through college. In May 2015, Sondee joined Search Homeless Services, whose mission is to provide hope, create community, and transform lives for the thousands of men, women, and children experiencing homelessness in our community. Sondee, we known each other well over the years, and we're proud that we at Beth Yeshurun have been able to help out a little bit with Search. It's very important to us. But not everyone's aware of what Search is. Tell us a little bit about Search, its origins, and the involvement of the Jewish community here in Houston in its founding.
Sure. First of all, thank you for inviting me tonight. I'm really excited to be able to talk to you and your congregation about Search and homelessness in Houston. So Search was founded in 1989, back when homelessness was really getting to be a larger problem in Houston and across the country. And it started out of the Social Action Committee at Congregation Emmanuel. And so our founder, Shelley Cypress, and a group of others were volunteering at one of the homeless shelters and saw the great need and the lack of resources and support services for individuals who are experiencing homelessness. And Shelley created Search. And from then, the organization has grown into a $12 million agency, one of the leading organizations in Houston serving those who are experiencing homelessness, and 130 employees, from this tiny but mighty and incredible woman.
Wow.
And so Emmanuel is still very involved, as well as most of the other major Jewish congregations in the city. And so we're thrilled to have Beth Yeshurun be part of what we're doing and what all y'all have done. And since the agency has started, as I said, we've grown tremendously. And in the early days, we were a day shelter. We were really the first place where people who were homeless could go. They would be in a shelter overnight. They would be kicked out during the day so the shelter could clean and prepare for the next night. And Search became that place where they could go for a meal, for laundry service, to take a shower, and to start to connect to other services. But at the time, it was really about those basic needs. And since then, our focus has really shifted beyond putting a Band-Aid on the problem to trying to solve it longer term. And so the focus today is on getting people off the streets, back into housing, back to work, back to self-sufficiency and stability. And it's a complicated problem and the solutions are complex, but to oversimplify it, we help people every step of the way. So we have our outreach team that will engage with people living on the streets. They get them assessed for housing. Once it is their turn, off of the waiting list, and they are matched with a housing navigator who helps them maneuver the process into housing, helps them find an apartment, negotiate a lease, get moved in, get situated with all the things they need. And at that point, they're turned over to a housing case manager who helps them to make sure they have a source of income, helps them improve their health so they can go back to work, learn to be good tenants and neighbors and build community so that they can stay successfully housed. And then the last piece of what we do, we also have our House of Tiny Treasures preschool for families who have small children. And so we serve children 2 to 5 years old who have experienced homelessness, and really just trying to break the cycle by setting these children up for success in school and in life.
It's really incredible, and for those of you who haven't seen Tiny Treasures or some of the places you described, where you're actually literally teaching people how to live on their own, how to pay rent, pay the bills, be a good neighbor, things that a lot of people may take for granted. But if you don't grow up with that and you're not taught those things, you can't take it for granted.
Exactly.
And it reminds me, some of you may be familiar with Rambam, Maimonides' list of highest forms of tzedakah. And the highest form of tzedakah, of giving to those in need, is not just giving them money, but it's teaching them to sustain themselves.
Yes.
And it really is truly remarkable work that you guys do at Search. That's what you're doing. You're trying to end the cycle. So explain, Sondee, the current homelessness problem in Houston, and why does Houston, compared to many large cities in America, certainly what we see right now on the West Coast and on the East Coast, why does Houston do a better job with our homelessness population than other cities across the United States?
Yeah, it's an important question, primarily because the optics sometimes make it look to the contrary, but Houston is doing an outstanding job in addressing homelessness. 10 years ago, we were on the top 10 list of cities ranked by homeless population, and since that time, we have cut homelessness by more than half. We have housed over 19,000 individuals, and we've really become a model for the rest of the nation in how to address this problem. And there were a couple of things that have contributed to that success and that progress. One, we changed our approach, and we now follow what's called a housing first approach. So in the old days, it used to be get your act together first. Get clean, get sober, get a job, and then we'll place you into housing. But we realized if someone is living on the street, they're in survival mode. All they can worry about is where's my next meal coming from? Where am I going to sleep tonight? Yeah. And so now housing is the first critical step. If we want to end homelessness, we have to help people get back into homes. But it's just the beginning. And so then it's teaching them, as you were saying, how to manage, how to learn how to navigate life's ups and downs on their own. And a critical piece of it is helping them improve their health. I mean, homelessness takes a terrible toll on somebody's health, and so getting them back, housing in and of itself is health care. By just housing someone, their health is going to improve. And so that was one thing that has helped. The other is that all of the different agencies who are serving people who are homeless have come together in a collaboration known as the Way Home. And so previously, everybody was trying to do everything. There was a lot of redundancy, there were a lot of gaps, and we've all really figured out what we do best in this system. At the same time, the city and the housing authorities have become part of this collaboration, and that's contributed to the success. So we will have, the Star of Hope and Salvation Army homeless shelters where people can stay overnight. The Beacon has become that day shelter where Search used to provide the basic needs. We've got healthcare for the homeless, which is providing the critical healthcare. Housing providers like New Hope Housing and Timanaw CDC that offer beautiful, affordable housing units. Yeah. And then Search is providing the case management services for the clients who've moved in there, as well as the housing authorities in the city and the county who are providing the subsidies that make it all sustainable.
Well, it's not surprising that there's a good spirit and a good air of cooperation in a city like Houston, and that shows that when we work together, we can really solve these issues. And it's nice to hear that the Jewish community has been a big part of that, continues to be a big part of that.
Absolutely.
But let me ask you, Sondee, what are some of the impediments to the work that you do at Search, and what's getting in the way?
Sure. One thing, because Houston has been so successful, Some of those who are still struggling with homelessness are some of the most complicated, challenging cases, dealing with severe mental health issues, substance use, things that are making it much more difficult to move forward in their lives. Another is the availability of affordable housing. Yeah. Unfortunately, the need is much greater than the availability of housing, and so there was a scarce supply of affordable housing for quite some time, but with Hurricane Harvey a few years back, that further depleted the supply, and there's not enough to meet the need. And then resources are also always
a problem,
an issue.
Well, I can imagine right now, that brings me to my next question. With this pandemic, it's hard for all of us, no matter where we live, if we're blessed to have an apartment or a home. But I can imagine that this pandemic has impacted search, your work, the work of your clients. What's happening with the homelessness problem now in Houston with this pandemic?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a whole new world, isn't it? It has completely changed, our operations, as a human services agency, and especially with the work that we do with our clients, it's very individualized and personal. We've never worked remotely before. And so initially we were working remotely, but our case managers are back, with social distancing in mind, different schedules. Most of our clients are not equipped to communicate by Zoom and all of that. And so, within a couple of weeks after the shutdown, as soon as we were able to get personal protective equipment for our staff, our outreach team was back out on the street, wow, engaging with people, primarily focusing on making sure that they understood what was happening, mm-hmm, how to stay safe, making sure that they had masks and hand sanitizer. They can't wash their hands, making sure they know where to go to get tested. There were isolation centers set up for people who did test positive or needed to quarantine while they were waiting for a test. But also really continuing to move people into housing. It was more critical than ever now to get people off the streets, yeah, and into homes. So for their own health and for the health of the community as a whole. And so, and our housing case managers are also back at work, making sure that their clients are able to access the resources that they need. A lot of the different, sure, agencies and resources have been closed. Fortunately, we were able to reopen the House of Tiny Treasures a couple of weeks ago. It's been really hard for the families not to have that. I mean, beyond daycare, we provide meals, we provide therapy for the kids, and after the stress and anxiety of the last 6 months, we were really happy to welcome the kids back.
That's great news.
And finally, we are bracing for an increase in homelessness.
Yeah.
There are so many people who are living on the edge, and with the economic impact and unemployment, we really fear that the numbers will go up. Even already we're seeing a lot of the people who are coming in the mornings for our morning office hours are people who are experiencing homelessness for the first time. We're accustomed to seeing a lot of the same faces over and over, but
I could imagine, and with unemployment still a high, and the amount of people that are even in Houston, which we've done okay compared to other cities, I imagine it's going to be even a greater challenge. So that brings me to the last question. As a rabbi, the Jewish tradition calls upon us to give to those in need, right? And yet our mayor and other city leaders, and it's not just here in Houston, but throughout the country, has been clear that we shouldn't give money to people we see on the street, to panhandlers, right? So what's your advice, Sondee? And when we encounter someone who may be homeless, they may not be, but they're a panhandler, right? And whether it's here at 610 and Beechnut, or when we're in downtown, it happens to us often, no matter where we go. What's your advice? I think it's called meaningful change, not spare change. Right. And we see the signs throughout our city. So what's your advice?
Sure. This is probably the question that I get asked most frequently. You know, it's human nature and it's our upbringing. You know,
Right.
it is hard to sit in your car and be right next to someone and not give them. We do agree with the mayor's suggestion. You know, giving money is really a temporary solution. If you feel compelled that you must give money, we suggest you can support Search or some of the agencies that are helping people make longer term changes to really get off the streets rather than, you know, helping them stay on the streets. But there are so many other things that you can do. I mean, first and foremost, recognize them. Let them know that you see them. Smile, say hello. Don't look the other way. We suggest keeping some bottled water in your car to give them something when you smile and say hello. And you can also put together small survival kits with some essentials, with water, with some non-perishable food items, with sunscreen or chapstick or socks or things that they need. But you can also include in that a resource guide, and anyone can contact me at Search. It's also on the Coalition for the Homelessness website. That's a printed guide to help people know where to go if they want to get assessed for housing, where to go if they need a place to stay, if they need food, if they need other resources, so that you're providing some useful information. But in the end, you have to listen to your heart. I will confess that there are times that I roll down the window and I will give someone money because it's really hard not to.
You know, it brings me back to those 8 levels that Maimonides laid out for us. And my colleague Rabbi Morgan gave a wonderful sermon about this years ago, this same question, and something we are confronted a lot with. What do we do? And he wrote a great sermon. He said, you know what, stay on those levels. The lowest, one of the lowest levels, it's still tzedakah, is giving something small to someone. So that's the 7th level, right, of the 8. So what I tell people is maybe have something in your car. We've given these packages out here at Beth Yeshurun in years past where it may be, like you described, a bottle of water and a little piece of food, something they could really use. But include in that package that you may hand to someone a resource guide, like you said, that you could print out online that lists all the places they can go and get meaningful change.
Exactly.
So if you feel compelled to give, which we should as Jews, make sure you're not just giving, but you're giving something that's really meaningful that can change their lives.
Absolutely.
So if that's one lesson we can all take this evening is we can make a difference. And it's certainly supporting Search and the work you do, Sondee, which is so fundamental to what we do as Jews and to our community. So we thank you for all you do, and know that we at Beth Yeshurun and B'nai Mitzvah, like our 2 this evening, we're always here to help. Yeah. And we want to be your partner in helping the homelessness issue in our community. So it's been a pleasure having my friend Sondee this evening. We have 2 more Shabbat Table Talks planned for this year, and then of course we'll begin in January again. But a month from now, for November, we're having my friend Mark Tobin, the Regional Director of the Anti-Defamation League. We have a lot to talk about with the rise of anti-Semitism, and we'll be speaking just after the election, so I know there'll be a lot to talk about. And then in December, we're going to have a member of the Jewish community, Abby Kamen, who is on our Houston City Council. Abby grew up here in Houston. She's a graduate of Emory Weiner High School, and she's one of the newest members of the Houston City Council. So we look forward to having Abby here in December for our monthly Shabbat Table Talk. And with that, I wish everybody a Chag Sameach, a good Shabbos, and we look forward to seeing you tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Good night, everybody.